Dizzy slept through the night of the frost giant and, according to Ban's orders, he slept through the next week as well. The prince knew Dizzy wasn't very fond of having company. The look in his eyes spelled betrayal every time he seen the kid. Nobody had an easy life in North Keir these days. The men who aren't sent off to war are isolated to their own wars at home. The prince admired the aesthetic of Jameson, a small town east of the palace. It was small and dirty, but the town exuberated life. Everywhere he looked was a man or woman hard at work, and almost 90 or 85% of the time a random passerby would stop and ask to help. If only you could see what you've done, Raina, whispered the prince to himself. Oi, prince. What do you say we get this show on the road? I'm getting sick of looking at this waste, Jarl said. The prince sucked his teeth before scowling at the man in response, but the new member of the crew took the words off his tongue. If you weren't so used to living 12 doors from a palace, you'd know this is one of the most thriving communities in the next 100 miles. Scowled the boy, his dark hair growing more coarse by the moment. Dizzy sat up wincing in pain as he did it. Call it what you want to call it, boy, but we've got orders we've got to carry out. Nursing a baby bird back to health wasn't on the itinerary. Shame, Dizzy called out from the back of the caravan. All these years of adulthood you spent stealing valuable things, and you still can't recognize when you've got something good in your possession. Jarl stalked to the back of the caravan where the prince sat next to a standing dis. Jarl was a scary man to look at, but only because of the large scar marking the right side of his face. Dizzy squared his shoulders and dropped his jaw, his eyes never leaving the man's ugly scars. You see yourself as a prize, and you expect me to see you the same. Jarl got really close then. Dizzy could smell the whiskey on his breath. Guess what, new boy? You're stuck. The same as us all. The prince may parade you around like some lost puppy, but trust me when I tell you that if you were invited on this caravan, I guarantee you're just as much prisoner as the rest of us. The prince didn't say anything. He watched with the same bored look he always had. Dizzy scoffed in response to the man. He pulled a wool blanket out of the corner of the van and grabbed his sword. It stayed sheathed to Ban's relief, but the boy was leaving the van, pushing Jarl out the way as he did. That's the difference between me and you, old man. Even if I were in your shoes, there isn't an army big enough to stop me from doing what I want. The boy ditched his palace guard clothing for his old black cowl. It flopped in the wind as he left the caravan, ivory gripped blade in his hand. The waves crashed against the rocks as Dizzy stared toward the sunset. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled a locket with purple stone flowers engraved onto the surface. He opened it to a picture of Raina. I thought you didn't take, Ban said, approaching the boy on top the large stone. Dizzy hadn't taken his eyes off the sunset. I don't, said the boy. So it was given, asked the prince. Borrowed, Dizzy said with a half smile toward the prince. She isn't like us, said the prince. She's good. Good. Dizzy thought about the princess the night of the ball. Her red dress made her shine brighter than the light of the palace. Ban was her brother and knew her best. What he meant to say was that she doesn't need a dog. She's better off with the Prince of Ham-IRA. Asked the boy, his hair falling in front of his eyes as he put the locket back in his pocket. I'm not a fan, I'll admit, but the people think it's a match made in heaven. Dizzy laughed then. I find it funny you royals allow the people to dictate your love lives while you dictate everything else in their lives. Ban scoffed. Laugh all you want, Moon Dancer. The right match of people could change lives for both kingdoms and the people running it. Love isn't just about the direct impact of your other half. Love is a weapon. It can level mountains if handled correctly. And I suppose this Snow Prince has the proper facilities for that. Of course he does, Ban said, crouching under the beam of the lighthouse. Dizzy understood what Ban was telling him, although there's always a different attitude contrasted between royals and normal folk. Dizzy didn't care to breach the subject, but as a boy with boyish pride he thought to himself, no man, woman, beast, prince nor king can do what I can. Only he was still the little boy whom his mother would bring to church every God's day, and in light of that he thought to himself all at the same moment, no man, woman, beast, prince, nor king can do what the gods can do. An explosion set off at the lighthouse, pulling the two out of deep thoughts. A look passed between them before they raced to the lighthouse. Swords and guns pulled, they heard a shrill scream carried out on the way, making the two run quicker across the sand. Dizzy held his sword right forearm up on his way in. The tip of his blade scraped the ground before speaking. Is there anybody in here? The scream of course indicated that there was somebody inside, but the question was posed to ask. Is there anybody in here willing to hurt me rather than at all? The lights were off in the cold stone tower, other than the trail of moonlight spilling through the tower windows. Dizzy lowered himself instinctively when entering one of the rooms, but his efforts were of no use. Are you okay? He asked the woman. She was lying on her back with pools of blood spilling from somewhere. Dizzy couldn't pin the wound. My husband, the woman stammered. Dizzy's eyes were wide, trying to find the wound to no success. He turned back and told Ban to go find the man, to which the prince replied, "No thanks." "What? Are you not going to help them?" "I will, but I'd much rather grab her and go than strut off looking for the man, or thing that did this." Right then another scream came from the adjacent room leading to the stairs. The woman's blood covered Dizzy's hands, and the prince was in no rush to help him find it. "She's gonna die," he screamed at the prince. "She's already dead," shouted the prince as the man made his way downstairs. He walked along the walls using them for support. He couldn't stand otherwise. "What did this to you?" Ban asked. The man screamed again, holding his head as if he were discomfited in his mind. Ban couldn't help but notice the man was in an incredibly obtuse amount of pain, with no blood on his clothing. "Just go," he screamed in an ugly voice. "We can help," Dis said, picking up his sword. "What did this to you?" asked the boy. Dis, step away from that man. "Tell me what did this to you?" The boy said, "We'll slay it right now." But the man wasn't listening. His hands were over his ears, as if Dizzy's small voice was 100 small voices. Ban told him once again to step away, and now he realized why. Another shrill scream came from the man, but this one was different. It was a scream of relief, as if there was something inside of him that was aching to get out, and finally it was out. Dizzy stepped back, now clutching his blade in bitter anticipation. "Dizzy, get your ass to this door." Dizzy ran for the door, but not before the beast got across the room to him. Its back arched as it made a swift transition to all fours. Dizzy felt himself crashing into the wall under the pressure of the beast. He felt his throat close. To his dismay, the bloody thing still had thumbs. The monster flinched in reaction to the prince's six-shooter. He screamed again, but this time it sounded nothing like a man. The thing flinched as Ban rained fire, allowing Dis to slip his blade hand free to take a chance at slicing its arm off. He grunted in his efforts, but his power was lacking. He'd sliced the top of its shoulder, and the thing slung him into a wall for the wound. His blade clattered against the ground as it stalked toward the prince. "So I guess good old lead won't work on you," said the prince, reloading the six-shooter. "Let's try copper, shall we?" The monster lunged and knocked the gun out the prince's hand. The prince managed to aim the other at the thing's heart, and ringing two off before getting launched through the shattered wall. Dizzy grabbed one of the fallen weapons and spun its chamber. He shot all bloody 6 shots before the monster lunged at him once again. Only this time he was ready. He sidestepped the flying beast after pulling a dagger from his clothes. He managed another slash onto the same shoulder. He squared himself afterward, waiting for its next attack. Ban had told him the damage to his shoulder was nothing permanent. That was before he ate the dust off of 2 lighthouse walls. "Let me be clear. I want to help you, but god damn it, I'll kill you if it's you or me." The man's eyes were that of a monster. Dis knew there was no man inside anymore, but he didn't know what it was. The more he traveled with the prince, the more green he felt. The man snarled, showing his new fangs. Dizzy watched him closely until he lunged. But Dizzy didn't make to dodge this time. He pulled back in make of a strike at the heart, but before the two could reach each other, a loud pop came from the entrance. The monster froze and then fell stiff. Behind it stood the prince. He'd shed out of his royal greatcoat and was standing tall in the doorway. His sleeves were rolled above his arms, and his nice little prince vest was dirty. But his gun was hot, and the look on his face was amused. "Silver," he said. The prick dies to silver, and then he crashed onto the floor.